Hello, y'all, and welcome to another Shacknews interview. This is TJ Denzer, news editor for Shacknews, and I am here with Chris King, founder of Battery Staple Games, and working on the sequel to 20XX, 30XX. Thank you so much for joining me, Chris. How you doing?
Oh, I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
Fantastic. So let's just go ahead and jump right into this.
Okay, I'm just going to hop on in. So you've seen our previous game. You've seen the, Steam Summer Festival build we put out of 30XX. So there's going to be a lot sort of in common between that demo and this one. You know, we really wanted to make sure that we're going to give something back to the fans who are going to continue to, return and play every demo we put out. You know, obviously our big goal every time we put out a demo is to sort of attract folks that haven't seen us before, but we always want to have kind of something new for those of us that have. So perfect. This demo basically has one of the stage types from the first demo and a new stage type in there, as well as I think the memory index is largely the same, but we've added the entropy cluster here, which adds a few difficulty modifiers that you can toss on. So I'll go ahead and jump through the demo. I don't know, I need to add up first. And then I'll look at those things for a bit. So even within Burning Temple, so this was in our Steam Summer Festival build, but we have a little bit of art here. I think we've redone some visuals in terms of enemy colorings. We recently redid the boss room as well. So you're very familiar with most of this already. But yeah, do you have any questions while we sort of go through the first level?
Yeah, this has been very impressive to me so far. I actually streamed this game a little bit back on I do a Monday show called Indylicious, in which I look at indie games in the community.
Oh, nice.
And right off the bat, this really does feel like the jump from where 20XX was kind of Mega Man. This kind of does feel like that logical step to Mega Man X.
Oh, that's great.
How did you go about redesigning sort of? There's quite a few differences in visual style here. How did you go about sort of evolving the style between 20XX and 30XX?
The art style evolution is a really great question. I've always known that even when we made 20XX, I knew that a really high fidelity, high quality pixel art style would suit the game really well. We made 20XX. I'm super proud of what we were able to do with the first game. But we kind of did it on limited resources, a more limited budget, and we did what we could. With 30XX, I always knew that if I could find the right pixel artist for it, that we'd have a really appealing style to transition to, and we honestly got really lucky. We found our art director, Glauber Kataki, artist and animator of Rogue Legacy, Chasm, Duelist, because he had posted on Twitter toward the end of 2018 saying he had some free time in his schedule, and I said, wow, I want to use that free time, and the rest is kind of history there.
Excellent. And I actually have had time to play this demo as well. Ryan set me up with a look at what we were going to be looking at today.
Oh, great.
So I did give the Clock Zone a go, and all the way through each of the 3 levels that have been presented so far to me, I'm really interested in the gimmicks that they have going for them. Obviously here in the Burning Temple, you have sort of a lot of fire hazards. You have the flames. You have the rolling ball of death.
Yep.
And then in the Echo Cave, you have those enemies that they will react when you fire your weapon.
Right,
you got
alarm.
and then the time zone, I saw you got a lot of moving gears, a lot of platform hazards, a lot of stuff like that. How do you go about approaching the design to a new level? Do you think of the gimmicks that you would like to do first, or do you think of the style of level that you would like to do and then build the gimmicks around it?
That's a great question that I don't feel like I get asked quite enough. I'm definitely a mechanics first designer. I will think about bundles of platform mechanics and enemies and hazards, gameplay elements basically that feel sort of intuitively like they would be fun to play together. And then from there, once we have kind of an initial mechanical implementation that seems to work, We'll figure out kind of how this fits visually, thematically, how to sort of tie it all together. Sometimes the sort of introduction of the visual theme and the feel will come earlier in the process, but we definitely do focus on sort of bundles of gameplay mechanics first that seem like they'll lead to sort of interesting level designs and sort of enough room, enough design space that we can, you know, sort of continue to build on that for a while without feeling kind of samey. And then we'll sort of come up with the rest of the theme from there.
That's awesome. Sorry, I was just I'm just staring. I love the art in this game. It's so fun to watch these bosses. It's so fun to watch the level layouts and design. And that kind of brings up another point I want to talk about, is that this is still sort of a roguelike game, meaning there are randomized elements, there are different designs that you can go up against. How do you... What would you say is the biggest challenge in making sure that, like, the roguelike elements of 30XX, like making sure that the pieces fit together, making sure that nothing doesn't mesh properly? What goes into that design?
When it comes to level design and making sure that, you know, all of our sort of randomly built levels are fully finishable, the key there is just good constraints, honestly. It's making sure that you have rules about the pieces you build, how they can fit together, such that you're kind of guaranteeing continuity between the pieces themselves. Actually making sure it's always possible, because, you know, we sort of have semi-authored chunks that are, you know, we define most of what's in a chunk, the basic platforms, the hazards, stuff like that, and then they'll sort of be, you know, semi-randomly populated from a number of different enemy placements when the game actually runs. Because of that sort of semi-authored nature, we can guarantee pretty straightforwardly that, like, the only reason a level is ever impossible is if we built, like, an actual bad chunk. Like, it's never possible because of an error in the algorithm, it's only possible because of an error, like, when you're actually building the level piece itself. Like, it's certainly, you know, easy enough for you to take our editing tools and make an impossible jump and then just stick it into the game and, you know, watch as it's completely impossible. That's definitely doable, but, you know, we can't have, like, an algorithmic failure because it's a little more airtight than that, thankfully.
And it's worth noting that this zone that we're looking at right now, Clock Zone, is an all-new zone as part of the game, as sort of the Gamescom 2020 update.
That's right, yeah, this is never before seen, or never before played by the public. We did announce it and show a little bit of video footage of it, maybe it was like a month ago, 2 months ago, but nobody's ever gotten to play it yet.
So, can you take me a little bit into, like, the design philosophy behind this particular level? Like, what inspired and what like was the design process behind Clock Zone?
Sure, yeah, the sort of mechanical inspiration, and you'll see kind of why the theme is such a slam dunk for us here. The mechanical inspiration here is kind of a level theme that is kind of player agnostic, if that makes sense. All of the hazards in Clock Zone are completely non-reactive to you. Everything in this level is just kind of doing its own thing. It's like the old Simpsons gag where Bart and Lisa are swinging their arms at one another and saying, "I'm just going to walk toward you and I'm going to keep swinging my arms. If you're there and you get hurt, it's not my fault." That's what Clock Zone is doing. It's just kind of doing its own thing, and you're here for it. So we wanted a couple of sort of level design mechanics that were kind of always going to be doing their own thing in their own time. And so we have, you know, the cycling gears that can both turn and move back and forth, and they come in both sort of like platformable variants and like spiky, harmful variants. This floating guy, the dropper at the top of the stage, is actually this mini boss, is the only element of the stage that does actually react to and move along with the player. And there is a narrative reason for that we will get into another day.
Awesome.
So it made a lot of sense for us that, you know, this theme that kind of is always doing its own thing would make a lot of sense if it were, you know, a big mechanical structure, and the sort of Clock Zone, Clock Tower really fit for us from there.
That's fantastic, because, like, you know, Clock is a very fine-tuned machine. Everything needs to be in working order.
Right.
I do also want to talk about the music of this game, because that is perhaps one of the, if not one of my favorite standout features in everything I've played so far. Like, Echo Beast's theme is, like, I've actually went out there and searched for ways to listen to that theme in my daily work routine.
Nice,
and,
that's phenomenal.
And I just want to talk, like, how... who composes your music, and how do they go about, like, building that distinct theme for a level once you've got it set up?
That's a great question. I wish Brandon were here to talk about this on his front, because I'm sure he'd give a more satisfying answer than I would. So our composer for both 20XX and 30XX is Brandon Ellis, aka City Fires. He's of course returning after working with us on the first game. We're super happy with all of that. With how 20XX's music played out. Oh, almost made that jump. So of course it's a natural that we'd want him to compose for the sequel as well. I think his process, he sort of does a lot of sort of musical brainstorming, where he has sort of a creative process where he can sort of generate bass ideas for melodies and tone for a given theme. And I think what he likes to do, and hopefully he'll hear this someday, correct me if I'm wrong, but he likes to, he'll start, instead of starting saying, today I'm going to write the music for Clock Zone, he just has sort of a brainstormy musical process where he'll create a whole bunch of melodies, a whole bunch of potential tracks, and then say, do any of these feel like they could be modified to fit the environments we're currently looking at, which works especially well, at the beginning of a project, before we even know exactly what all the level themes are yet. That kind of process works really well, since we have a lot of openings of a lot of different kinds of music. It works very well, and then he's sort of able to refine those ideas down to, more tight-feeling individual themes.
Absolutely excellent. And at this point, 30XX is currently, if I recall correctly, is it slated for 2021?
Yeah, so we've been telling people it's about 70% likely that early access hits sometime between right now and spring-ish 2021. So we're definitely going to early access. Our community and the feedback we got from our community while 20XX was in early access was such a huge part of why the game ended up being good, why it got to where it did. So we'd be kind of foolish to sort of skip early access this time around. So we'll definitely be doing that. And then updating the game a lot over the course of early access, just like we did the first game. Probably not quite as long of an early access period. 20XX was in early access for literally almost 3 years. But we'll still make sure we have plenty of time to sort of get the community's feedback on everything we're doing well before 1.0. And of course, all of those dates for us, early access, 1.0, they're both kind of line in the sandy kind of dates for us. We really want to continue to support 30XX for a good long time after 1.0. And so, that was an interesting slide. I wonder what caused that. Style points. Anyway, we really want to continue to support the game well after 1.0. So exactly where 1.0 is almost a little bit arbitrary for us, because we'd love to continue supporting with new content, new stage types, characters, power, stuff like that, well after we actually hit 1.0. But yeah, the short answer to your question is early access, probably by or before spring 2021.
Fantastic. And what do you see the development cycle looking like leading up to that early access?
Sorry, I'm not totally sure I understand the question. Less like what do we still have to work on, or like how long do we have?
Yeah, we have 3 stages here right now, but what do you feel like you hope to have ready for early access?
Oh, that's a great question. When we get to early access, so we haven't hard committed to this yet. We're looking to have probably 6 of our 8 level themes in place by early access, and then we'll push the last 2 sort of as we feel they're ready for the public during early access, leading up to 1.0. It's not a hard commit from us yet. We're still talking about that, but I think I am comfortable saying that we are probably going to go that route.
Awesome.
And so that'll be 68 main themes. Of course, the game's finale themes won't come in until 1.0. Similar to 20XX, you'll play through the 8 stage themes, although they're all unique this time, so no more boss sharing. So of course, Clock Zone is one of 8 unique themes, not one of 4 like a 20XX theme. And then the game will have a finale sequence. It might be 2 levels, it might be 1 super long one, it might be more. In 20XX, the finale sequence is levels 9 and 10, the super difficult platforming level, and then a super heavy, intense combat level to finish off the run. And so that'll definitely be once we get to 1.0.
And I think it's worth bringing up, co-op has always been an interesting angle of the XX series, and I wanted to ask, How have you gone about refining it for 30XX? Like, what lessons do you feel like you learned from 20XX that have been maybe applied here to tighten up the experience?
That's a great question. So, because co-op quality of life is such a large issue in general, most of the lessons we learned on 20XX are, they're in 20XX itself. So stuff we added like augment sharing and both players getting, or so that's the same thing, but stuff like being able to teleport to your partner. So if you're playing co-op with somebody, if you're really like a platformer enthusiast and you're really tight with the game's platforming, and you're playing with somebody who's maybe a little bit newer to these kinds of games or like isn't used to platformers, we added the the co-op friend teleport where you can jump forward and join your buddy. Because one of the things we noticed was players of sort of disparate skill playing 20XX and saying, what really bums us out, what really harshes our experience here is when, I can get through a platforming section, but my buddy can't, and then we're just kind of stonewalled. So on normal difficulties and below for 20XX, we added the co-op teleport. We're playing with a lot of ideas on how we want to refine the 30XX co-op experience right now. I think our design decisions aren't totally set in stone there yet, so one of the things we're kind of playing with, and I'm definitely not promising this yet, but it's something we're kind of playing with. Right now, when you pick up an augment, it gets applied to your teammate as well, right? Unless it's core, and then both of you get a choice. Because of one of the new... So you've played the demo, you've seen the Steam Festival demo, so you're familiar with the new salvager mechanic, which lets you interact with an item that you found in the world, like this Lucavi here in front of me. And if you don't want it, you can press Y instead of B, and you will crush the item, and instead of receiving it, you'll get some kind of side benefit. So for me, I can pick up Lucavi here and have it as kunai, or I could have pressed Y and crushed it for 2 HP, so here I'll get rid of my old saber, and I'll get 2 core points out of it. If I had cores, that would be really helpful. One of the things we're playing with, because we have the salvage range here, so in 20XX, most items are worth picking up, with the exception of the things in very safe labs. You want to be picking up, 90 to 95% of the power-ups available to you, because they're almost all beneficial overall. In 30XX, because of the salvager mechanic, players are going to have a lot more choice about sort of the shape of their build as they play the game and as they go through a run. And as a result, we're kind of playing with the idea of giving both players their own copy of every item that drops, because players might, as they sort of develop different builds, they might decide they have different priorities. If they have different cores available to them, if one of them is sort of going power-based and one of them is going attack-based, they might decide that a certain item is worth salvaging for one player, but worth picking up for the other one. You can tell I'm playing with one of the new entropy conditions on, because those guys all have double health and they're very tanky. But yeah, that's one of the big things we're kind of looking at doing differently from a co-op perspective this time around. But it's still very experimental. I would guess that's the kind of thing we're going to kind of lean on the early access community to kind of help us figure out, like, is this the right change for the game?
Awesome. So, let me make sure I understand that. Would that be like, I think when you mention like individual like gear, I think of like instance loot and other games like Borderlands 3 recently put this in, where one player could pick up an item, but that item would still be there for another player. Like it wouldn't be like it wouldn't disappear for one player. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
That's exactly the kind of thing. So we'd either implement that has exactly what you're describing, where both players just receive an instance of the item and can do whatever they want with it. That's kind of invisible to the other player. Or the 20XX method for that was literally to spawn 2 copies of the item with like a player 1 and a player 2 marker on it, so you knew whose was whose. So we'll go one of those routes, but the thought there, if we move forward with this design at all, the thought there is that both players do have their own copy of the item that only they can have. So they get to pick, do I want to take the item, or do I want to salvage it for whatever the benefit is?
And I can't remember if I saw anything in this like in the original, but I do want to ask about this here because as I've played more recent roguelikes, one of the more interesting things I've started to notice is like if you felt like you wanted to play a certain run of a level, or if you wanted to play a certain run of the game, they had this option where you could enter a seed and you could go back to that form of the level or of the run. Is there going to be any sort of seed system in 30XX?
Yep, there actually already is one in 20XX. That was something we added sometime during early access. I'll be honest, I don't really remember how far in. but 20XX supported it, and 30XX will too. So you can the seed both contains the the skulls, the optional difficulty modifiers that are on in a given run, and the RNG seed, what levels spawn in what order and what items and such like that. So yeah, we'll fully support all of that.
Fantastic. Well, I do believe that's pretty much all of the questions I had off the top of my head. Is there anything you mentioned that this game is currently slated for tentative dates for early access sometime between now and spring 2021. Is there anything else you want to add? Where can people find the game? Where can they find out more about it?
Sure, yeah. So early access will almost certainly be Steam only. So our goal there is early access via Steam, and then 1.0 sometime down the line, maybe a year or so later, via Steam and at least one console platform. We're not quite sure which one yet. So for more info on the game, you can go to either you can search 30XX on Steam and see our coming soon page and wishlist it. That would be really great. You can also go to batterystaplegames.com and sign up for our mailing list, check out our trailers, all that good stuff. And yeah, I think those are probably the two principal places you'd want to go to find out more about the game. You can also follow me on Twitter. My handle is batterystaple_G because I am very good at social media. And I thought underscores in my handle were a good idea, and Battery Staple was taken. And our Discord for both 20XX and 30XX is discord.gg/20XX.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for this demonstration, and thank you so much for this interview. I do want to do a little bit of station identification here. This has been TJ Denzer, news editor for Shacknews.com, here with Chris King, founder and developer for 30XX at Battery Staple Games. Thank you so much for your time, and this will be us signing off.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Gamescom.